Good everyone, AzureBlaze, and welcome to another video in Reforj. In this video, I'm going to be going over circuits. I'm going to be doing a guide because, I want to do a guide on it, and someone asked for it in the comments very nicely. Therefore, I thought, you know what? I think I will. I've learnt a lot about circuits over the last week. I've been having a lot of fun playing around, and I want to show different things that I have learnt about it and how, like, the general way it works. Therefore, I'm going to set it today to help out a little bit. There we go. Yeah, first things first, we have all the different circuit blocks that have been added. We have the emitter, the receiver, a reflector, a switch, a repeater, inverter, logic block AND, logic block OR, and a powered door. And I will get to all of these and what they do further down the line. All of these are made in the fabricator, this little device here, this little table or whatever it's called, workstation. I want to turn it to survival to show you. There we go. Everything is in here to make all this sort of stuff, including now the advanced wingsuit, the coloring station, the forge, and an aura battery, which is a new thing as well. However, it doesn't really apply for what I'm showing today. Okay, yeah, to make a fabricator, you need iron ingots, gold ingots, bright resin, noble glass shards. You put them together, and you get a fabricator. Pretty simple, to be honest. There we go. Let's put all this away again. And then let's switch back to creative, because I do not need to be in survival. Okay, first things first. A basic circuit will always work by using an emitter and a receiver. You emit the signal beam, which is the green thing in between them, from the emitter to the receiver, and that is the basics of circuits in general. You can turn on and off the emitter. And when it's on, well, it technically is two different types of signals. However, the easiest way to think about it is on and off. Therefore, when it's on, big, thick green light, and then thin little one when it's off. Over here, there's a lantern. This does not work with circuits. I wanted to put it there simply to say, look, this doesn't do anything. Yeah, as you can see though, turning it on will open and close the door. Pretty simple, yeah. Emitter goes to receiver, and whenever receiver picks up something from emitter, it affects the block next to it directly. It will not work diagonally, only on things directly next to it, for knowledge. A reflector is used to bounce emitter beams, or whatever they're called, logic beams, signal beams, I believe they're called. Yep, signal beams. It's used to bounce the signal beam, whatever direction you sort of want to do it, if you use a 45-degree angle block, which you can do. Actually, I don't even need my HUD on, do I? I can just set up my HUD. No, I'll turn the HUD back on. Okay, yeah. Yeah, the emitter will get to the receiver by using these reflectors to bounce it along, which I think is really neat. These are such nice things. It is good to note as well that signal beams do not cross with other signal beams like they would in, say, Minecraft with redstone. If you were to put redstone here and there was redstone going this way, they would connect. That does not happen in this game. You can have signal beams go straight through each other, which helps to keep things a little bit more concise, I think. Yeah, basically, yeah, reflectors bounce the beam, whatever angle you sort of want it to go to, as long as you do a 45-degree. The distance of a signal beam is about 16 blocks, I believe. You can use what is called a repeater. This is the repeater one. It will extend it another 16 or such, basically. And you can put it anywhere in the line. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be at the end. It doesn't have to be like at the start or the middle or anything like that. It can go wherever you sort of want it to be. Pretty simple. You can use hollowed blocks to put emitter beams through, which I think is very fun. I very much like that. It's a good way of hiding things. Something I've noticed, I don't know whether this is intentional or not, you can see the beam through the hollow blocks. I actually think that's quite helpful, because it's only very thin, and if you want to cover it up again, all you do is you put another block against it, or like a slab, and you'll never see it there again. Yeah, no, I think that's actually quite neat. However, yeah, you can put blocks through there. Pretty fun. Moving on here, we have the inverter. And the inverter essentially switches the signal. Basically, let's go, instead of saying on and off, let's go thick and thin. This is probably the easiest way to do it. The thick signal and the thin signal. The thick signal goes into the inverter and it becomes a thin signal. The inverter literally switches the signal type. Therefore, if I were to turn the emitter off, or turn it to thin, it'll switch its output to thick, and yeah, it powers things up same way as everything else does. It's pretty good for if you have to constantly switch things or do loops, which we'll get to eventually. Let's go here. This is a AND block? Yes, this is the AND block one. And basically the idea of an AND block is it takes signals. However, all of the signals that goes into it have to be the same signal type, thick or thin. It has to be, say in this case, thin. Oh, sorry. It all has to be thick for it to output a thick beam. Yeah, basically that's what it is. Therefore, if I turn this to thick, see how if this one's thick, it will not output a thick beam. If I turn this one and this one to thick, it will, because it has to have all inputs, which are these little bits on this side and on the sides here. They all have to be thick to output a thick beam, essentially. That's very handy for creating combination locks and stuff, which we'll get to again eventually. This is the OR block, and it's almost like the opposite of the AND block. Essentially, it is any one of the ones in it will create a thick beam coming out of it. Say I only turn one on, it'll count that, because it only needs one to do it, which is very handy for creating things that are like long distance away. Or if you say you want a light switch in a room and you want it on two sides of the rooms, yeah, that's basically the easiest way to do it. It will go to the OR block and then go to the receiver, and it will light up the light or whatever, such like that. Pretty good, yeah. Any one of these will work as long as it's got a thick beam. It'll do it. Yeah, and this is basically a small version of a circuit. Basically, you do not need to see the beams to create the circuit. You pretend there is a beam already going through here. Basically, it works regardless like that. You pretend there's a beam going through it. You can't see it. You don't need to see it, which is really good for keeping things compact. However, for the sake of ease, I'm going to do most of them with the beams out, simply to show what's sort of happening. Here I've created a combination lock using the AND block that I was talking about. Basically, only these three need to be on together to open the door. One of them does not work, no matter what you do. It has to be all three, like that. And I can come around and show sort of what I've done. It's pretty hidden. However, like, yeah, there's three. Those three switches specifically are going to this AND block there, and they're pointing at the receiver, which is above the door, and it'll turn it on. Because it's an AND block, all three of them need to be thick for it to work, and the other ones are sort of going nowhere behind it. This does have the side effect of being a basic combination lock. This does have a side effect of if you simply turn on all the switches, it'll work. Like, it's only as long as those three switches are on. Yeah, it doesn't matter if any of the other switches are on. However, that is something I will show off in a little bit more of an advanced state later. Here I kind of wanted to show this because I think it's funny more than anything. This is like an infinite power source type thing. Like, once you turn this circuit on, you can't turn it off, because it's literally going thick, thick, thick. Like, these receivers, oh, that's the other thing. The receivers will power the emitters, and that is like essential for creating loops and stuff like that. If you power a receiver, it will power the emitter next to it. Therefore, yeah, that goes like that. And there's no way to turn this off again, because this emitter powered this receiver, which powered this emitter, which powered this receiver, which is powering this one, and it's a loop that will never turn off, no matter what you do, unless you put a block there in between to turn it off again. Yeah, I think it's funny. It's pretty useless. I guess unless you specifically want a circuit that you turn on and then can never turn off again. Yeah. Alright, moving on. Here is an example of a pretty basic loop, to be honest. There's an emitter, there's an inverter, and a receiver. The idea is, instead of getting stuck like this, where one does everything, this inverter will constantly switch the signal. Therefore, say this emitter is powering, it's sending a thick line through here, it will switch it to a thin line. And then when it's sending a thin line through, it'll switch it to a thick line, which will power this receiver, which powers this emitter to be a thick line, which will come back around here, which will power this one to be a thick line, which will change that to a thin line, and it keeps looping, because that'll then be a thin line, and then this will be a thin line, and that will be a thick line. It's a pretty simple loop. And then what you can do is you can put anything off the receiver, essentially, to get it to work. Therefore, yeah, this loop's constantly spinning and turning on and off. if you put an emitter, say, here, it'll constantly do it as well because it's being powered by the receiver. Pretty neat. Here's an example of a loop sort of done in like a bit of a distance away from it. Like this is sort of how I was showing them with the emitter. And I've made it a little bit smaller as well because, as I said, you don't need to see the green lines. You can simply go around like this. Yeah, this one's powering, turning off, and rotating like that one, except smaller. And this is from a distance, as I said, using the reflectors to get it to the door, to constantly open and close it. This is an example of another type of loop, which works a little bit differently. It uses more inverters and stuff like that, instead of using multiple emitters and receivers. It only uses one emitter and receiver, and then uses 3 inverters. If you use, or you can use 1 inverter as well if you want. Like it'll do it. Have like, for the sake of this, 3 inverters. If you use 2, it'll get stuck on the same issues from before. Therefore, yeah, you want to use an odd number amount of them. However, you know, this emitter goes here, switches that on or off type thing, which switches on or off, hits that, powers it, rotates around and around again. Therefore, yeah, this is probably a cheaper way to do it, I guess, depending on like the emitters and the receivers and such. Next up, I suppose I haven't actually shown how the crafting recipes for them. If I can go back to that before I go to the next point. This is another loop. It's not really a loop I would ever suggest using. It doesn't use a receiver, which means you can't really like interact with anything with the loop. Like there's no point to the loop really. However, I thought I'd show it off anyway. It's an emitter going into an OR block. Yeah, because that sort of starts it, and then it'll spin around using the inverter constantly into the OR block, constantly spinning. However, because you don't have a receiver, there's not much you can do with it. It simply sits there. Anyway, yeah, before I go on, let's look at how everything is crafted, because yeah, for some reason I didn't think about that. Okay, there we go. Yeah, let's start. Well, the aura battery uses aura, noble glass shards, and iron ingot. The switch uses simply an iron ingot and a gold ingot. The power door uses iron ingots and glass, which is interesting. Oh, that might explain something later, a quirk later that I found out. Okay, I actually haven't looked at the ingredients. I've been doing this on Creative Mode. The inverter uses refined glass, which is a little bit harder to get, silicon, and an iron nugget, and iron nuggets. Same with the repeater; it uses the same thing. The reflector uses refined glass and iron ingot. Why did I say nuggets? Iron ingot. The receiver uses refined glass, silicon, and iron ingots, like the previous 2 back here. The emitter uses aura as well. Therefore, yeah, the emitter is slightly more expensive. It uses noble glass as well. The logic block and it's sort of the same, except it uses a gold ingot, I think. Yeah, that's the difference. Same with the ore one. Yeah, basically. And where is there no receiver? Oh, there's the receiver. Oh yeah, it's the same as. Okay. Therefore, yeah, no, it's a slightly cheaper way of doing it. Yeah, basically. Let's go back into. Yeah, I can't believe I didn't even think about that. I actually haven't looked at them crafting-wise yet. That was silly me. Anyway, yeah, no, this is where I sort of show examples of different things that you can do. Yeah, it's a little bit complicated looking. However, the idea of this is sort of to like create like, I don't know, like a constant on and off with all the different lights using the lumen stone here. It sort of flicks on and off and stuff like that. I have a feeling the lighting engine has a little bit of trouble keeping up with it sometimes, and the lumen stone's not exactly a very good light for discerning each individual light, to be honest. It sort of all blends together, the light from it. However, I can give a sort of like a brief overview of what I've done here. Basically, I have 1 or 2 emitters creating little loops down here. As you can see, emitter, round, up, loop, round, up, loop. And then I have emitters and stuff coming off these receivers, and I sort of have them going all over the place into the emitters behind here, which then turns on the receivers behind the blocks. Essentially, they all go into the receivers behind the blocks. It's essentially a loop with a whole bunch of things coming off it to turn the blocks on and off. This next one over is kind of fun. However, it's kind of hard to see in this. It goes up and then down and then up and then down and then up and then down the light. However, as I said, with the way the light works with a lumen stone, it's kind of hard to tell, to be honest. This one's a little bit harder to see because it's all blocked up. However, the basic idea is you have... Oh yeah, my emitter's actually under the ground, which I can show. Okay, I can show down here. There we go. This is my big loop. What you can do is you can put more emitters and receivers in. The more you seem to put in, at least by what I can tell, the more you seem to put in, the slower the loop, from what I can tell, which is good to know. I think you may be able to do it with inverters as well. However, I'm not 100% sure. I had to like test the differences, which was kind of interesting. The only reason this wall's here is to stop light from leaking over. However, you know, essentially I've got the loop coming up from under the ground. It's hitting this receiver, which powers this emitter. It goes up and around and hits this receiver, which powers that one. It's like it keeps going, essentially bouncing back and forth, as you can see here, to turn on all the lights, essentially. Yeah, I can even show from up here as well. So they all sort of bounce back and forth. And yeah, I think it's pretty neat. That looks like something out of Star Wars. A bigger version of something like this is over here, behind everything. Yeah, basically, to get this to go along, it's pretty simple when you sit down and look at it. Essentially, there's the emitter here. It's pointing up, turning on that receiver, which is turning on the emitter that turns on those lights, and another emitter that goes to the next receiver, which again then sends up, turn on lights, sends up another emitter, goes to next receiver, and it keeps going on and 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 on. And down here I have, I believe that's a repeater, that one. Yep, to extend the signal. A few of them around here, and then at the end one inverter to swap the signal to allow it to do the on and off without getting stuck. And the way this one works as well is I can turn it on the switch and it will keep the lights on always. I'd imagine as well, if you have another inverter here, you would be able to do the opposite way around. To be honest, I think that'd be pretty neat as well. However, you know, that's that. That's fun. Oh, I didn't mean to turn around the emitter. You can do that as well with some of the blocks. You can turn them around. Okay, moving on. This one here is a more complex combination lock, and this time the door will only open if these three switches are on and no other switch. You see, if I turn on any other switch, it'll close the door. No matter what, if I turn on any other switch, it'll close the door. These three switches have to be on. I turn that one back off. Like, it can't be one like it was before. There has to be all three. And if you turn every other one on, which you can use to cheese the first one, it will not work. It will only work without it. And now I can't remember the combination. Is it that one and that one up there? Yeah, there we go. Okay, essentially, what I can show you here is what I've done. I've done a similar sort of thing. The blocks that I want to use to open the door will go to an AND block, and therefore they will have to be on before that. That's pretty simple. The rest of the blocks, though, instead of blocking them off, they go up here and they all eventually coalesce into two ore blocks here, because there's too many to go into one ore block. Yeah, they coalesce into two ore blocks here, and then they go together to become one ore block. Yeah, which sends one signal beam down to this receiver, to this emitter, and then this inverter inverts the signal into the AND block. Basically what's happening is this inverter, if it's always here, it'll constantly put a signal into this AND block. There's actually 4 signals in this AND block, the 3 for the buttons and this one from the inverter. If you turn the receiver off here, turn the receiver off here, it'll turn this emitter on properly, which will turn the inverter off, which tells it there's no 4th signal which it needs to open the thing. Therefore, turning on any of the other switches, because they're all blocks and not AND blocks, will turn on this emitter, which will turn it off using the inverter, turn off the one signal that it needs to stay on. I think that's pretty neat. And obviously, like, when you're not trying to like show what it is with all the beams and stuff like that, you can make it way more compact and stuff, which would be really good. Now we're sort of in the quirk territory. Little quirks that I've noticed from the circuits. Like, this one's interesting. Basically, this is a situation where a door, like, this is the same circuit, as you can see. There's one emitter, one receiver, one emitter, one receiver, a door underneath it. One of them is open, one of them is closed though. And I don't know, again, I don't know whether this is intentional or not. However, like, if I use this one, I cannot open and close the door. No matter what I seem to do, it won't open and close the door. With this one, it will. I can open and close the door to my heart's content, despite the fact that it's the same one. And what the difference is depending on how you place this circuit down. If you put the door down first, I believe, hold on, let's try it out manually. Let's switch that around. Let's go here, put the door down. If you put the door down first, then the receiver, it will work. If you put the receiver down first, and then the door down underneath it, it will not work. You have to place the receiver on the door for it to work from above. That is not the case for below. Because, I mean, actually, it might be. Hold on. Let's try then, shall we? If I put the receiver there and put the door there, that works. However, if I put the receiver on the bottom, yeah, it works as well. Therefore, it's only on the top. Don't know why. Yeah, funny little quirk I found. Here's more quirks, I guess. The door situation. Now that I know that this is made by glass, this makes things a little bit more little bit more understandable. Except it doesn't actually, because glass doesn't work with them. Glass blocks out the beam. Yeah, glass blocks out the beam. However, the power door does not block out the beam, which I think is fairly interesting. I don't know why that's the case. If I turn that on, it'll work on behind it because the power door does not block the beam out at all. Very interesting. Wooden doors, on the other hand, do block the beam out and don't when they're open. Don't know why. Yeah, I don't know what that is. However, if you were sort of thinking that you could set up a circuit with the wooden door opening and closing to let a beam in and out, unfortunately that's not possible because the receiver does not do anything with the door. Like, it doesn't interact with it. No matter what you do, yeah, the door does not work on a receiver, the wooden doors. Only the powered doors do. Which is interesting. Interesting way to do things. Yeah, I don't know really... I mean, that's not really... Yeah, it's interesting. That's a little quirk there. This one isn't one I would really call a quirk at all, to be honest. However, I didn't know really where else to put it. Basically, these two circuits are the same. This one is much more compact because it has an emitter to a receiver to an emitter to a receiver to an emitter to a receiver to an emitter to a receiver. You would think it goes up and then down and then up and then down. That's not really the case. I mean, this, as I said, this isn't really a quirk. It's more design of the game. However, I didn't know where to put it. And it's sort of something I wanted to warn about. Say you turn that on, it will not work on the door. That's because when you turn on this receiver using this emitter, it will power both that emitter, which is where you want it to go, and this emitter here. Therefore, all of them are going to be on sort of at the end and off and on. Therefore, it messes it up. Like, it messes it up. It doesn't really work. That's why I had to do like lots of splitting up with these two. Oh, not this two. This one here specifically. That's why I had to split them up instead of putting them all on the same wall for both of these. Yeah, instead of putting them all on the same wall, I had to split them up because putting them together simply powered each other up and left it always on, literally all the time. That's the case here as well. Like, it's basically always on. As you can see, the lights don't turn on or off. However, in this circuit, which is the same one, except they're split apart, which means this receiver won't power anything. The lights will turn on, the door will open and close, like such. Pretty simple, like I think. Yeah, if you want to do things flat though, you kind of have to do things like this, like I said from over there before. Have everything in checkered and then like split it up. That's really the only way to do it. And then the last thing, the last little quirk. A really funny little one, to be honest. I'm not 100% sure. Basically, we have this door that's open because of this. If we pour water on it, for some reason it interacts with it. I don't know if that was intentional. I have a feeling it wasn't. However, taking the water away will make the door move. Putting the water there will make the door move. Don't know why. It's, I guess, again, fun little quirk from things that I found. And that's it. That is all the knowledge I have, at least, of encompassed of circuits. If there's anything else that anyone else like knows about, they're more than welcome to let me know. Basically, what I did is I came over here, experimented a whole bunch, with all sorts of different little things, played around with things, looked at how water affected everything, which is how I found that. Yeah, I kept playing with a whole bunch of little things, and then I went off and built this, which I'm very proud of. I'm very happy with how this came out. Therefore, yeah, if there's anything else that people want to see me do guides of, I'd be happy to maybe have a look at it. Depends on what it is. Yeah, no. Otherwise, though, that is, I guess, the basics. A guide to circuits in Reforj, the TU7 edition. Yeah, and I quite like circuits. I've been wrecking my brain. It's been fun to do. Therefore, yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I shall be back in the next one. Cheers, everyone.